You know, it's really hard to make teasers for your videos when your toddler runs off with your Skittermander decorations. Well, I guess it's a good thing that we don't have Skittermanders in Pathfinder yet. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Lost Omens, the Grand Bazaar for Pathfinder 2nd Edition on this episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller and do I have a deal for you. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today we're going to be taking a look at Lost Omens, the Grand Bazaar, which is a deep dive into several different stores available inside, well, the Grand Bazaar in Absalom, one of the largest cities inside of the Pathfinder setting of Golarion. This book is 135 pages. It has an MSRP of $34.99, and it is crammed full of new equipment, new options, even a few new archetypes. It has a ton of content that players might find interesting, as well as details about the shops that sell these various goods and the shopkeepers that run these businesses. So today, I'm going to be talking about the things that I like and maybe things I don't like as much about the book. I will give you a brief overview of some of the material you can expect to find in this book, and we'll talk about how you can use this book at your gaming table to help give you some insight on whether or not this is a good product to add to your collection. Now really quick, I would like to state that this review is not sponsored in any fashion. Paizo didn't ask me to do this. This is a book that I purchased for my own gaming table, and I'm just offering my thoughts about a product that I purchased to help give you some insight into whether or not it's something you might be interested in. As with any review that I do on this channel, allow me to say that you should take this review with a grain of salt. Remember that this is just one person's opinion on the internet, and the best review of any product is always to try it for yourself. So I highly recommend that if you can borrow this book from a friend or check it out at a local gaming store before making a purchase decision, that is always going to give you a better insight as to whether or not a product is for you. But with all that in mind, let's get started. Now, if you've seen any of my other reviews on this channel, you know that I like to begin at the end, give you my overall thoughts about a product, and then work my way through the product to help you understand how I arrived at the conclusions that I did. And I'll go ahead and tell you that this review is probably going to be a very short review. Overall, I have one really strong thought about Grand Bazaar, and past that point, really all I can do is skim through some of the content to give you an idea of what you might find. But let me go ahead and give you that overall grade. My overall grade for Lost Omens Grand Bazaar is a solid B. This is an incredible Dungeon Master resource, cleverly disguised as a player resource. And that's actually kind of the main thing that I would like to relay with this video. Lost Omens Grand Bazaar is a Dungeon Master resource. And when you first look at this book, you might not realize that that is the case. And really, I think that if anyone is going to get frustrated with this product, it's going to be someone who is purchasing this product with the perspective that it is a player-focused product, and it is not. Now, this book does have a ton of player-focused content, and it is very easy to see how someone who is looking at this book on first impression would think, oh, this is a book for my players. It has new gear and new runes and new familiars and new animal companions. It has 3 new archetypes that my players can take. This book is chock full of stuff that players might use in leveling up their character or gearing their character up for an adventure. This book is packed to the brim with the kind of crunchy content that players eat up, and I imagine that players of Pathfinder 2e are going to find a lot of fun stuff in this book. And that's why I think it is very important to stress that this is actually a Game Master product. This is a book that is designed to help add depth and complexity and interest to the shopping portion of a Pathfinder 2e role-playing game. This book details 22 different shops located in the Grand Bazaar, and then even has 28 other shops that are kind of short paragraph-long blurbs that you could flesh out for your players to visit. It has a section called Absalom Ads, which introduces the 3 new archetypes that I mentioned, but is actually describing a periodical that your players can subscribe to in-world in order to receive training manuals. And of course, this book also includes some very handy equipment tables so that you can very quickly sort through the options that are available by level in this product. So let's ask the question, why do I say that this is a Game Master focused product? Well, remember when I said it describes the shops and the stuff that they sell and the shopkeeps? Well, in this book, it will tell you about the specific shop that you can go into, about the shopkeep who runs it, and for most of the shops, it will give you 1, if not 2 or 3 different plot hooks that you can use with that shopkeep as a possible source of adventure for players. Which basically means you cannot hand this book to your players if you want to use the plot hooks in this book. The fact that the player-focused content is mixed right in with the Game Master-focused content kind of creates this weird tension where, as a Game Master, you want to present these options to your players, but you don't actually want to hand them the book because while reading about the cool new options, they might discover information that you would prefer to keep behind the Game Master screen. And so ultimately what this book is a resource for you as a Game Master to develop interesting shopping experiences for your players, but when it comes to the actual things that they can find, you will want to give that information to them another way rather than just handing them the book. But I think as long as you can keep that in mind, as a Game Master, you will still get a ton of value out of this book. As I've said, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of good content, and even the plot hooks, there's several interesting ideas that they throw out in this book. So really the important thing to know is, while this book contains a lot of player-focused content, this book is really intended for Game Masters as a resource to make the shopping experience more interesting. As long as you're aware of that distinction, this book can be very useful and provide a lot of quality content for your gaming table. But that does raise the question, what kind of content can you find inside the Grand Bazaar? I'm not going to dive into every single option presented in this book because honestly, it's almost content overload, the amount of different things that they have included. Paizo went big with this, but I will run through some of the highlights and some of my personal favorites to help give you an idea of what you can find inside of this book. Now, one important thing that is worth noting in this book is this book includes rules for gear to help characters with disabilities participate in adventures. Now, the concept of disabilities in storytelling, that is a conversation that is very complex and is honestly beyond the scope of this video, but I have talked about disabilities in storytelling before on this channel. I did a 2-part series, one part focusing on the disability side, and the second part focusing on the storytelling side, and if you're interested in that conversation, I'll throw a link to the video up here. You can go check that out. As someone who has worked with individuals with disabilities in the past, I do think that representation is very important, and I want to see representation done well inside of games, so I definitely encourage you to go check that conversation out. But there is an entire shop in this book called Morin's Mobility Apparel that caters specifically to this style of equipment that can help people with disabilities participate in adventures. And that's kind of the theme of how this book works. it will present a shop, and then that shop you will get a description of the building, you'll get a description of the shopkeep who runs that particular business, along with, as I mentioned, a couple of plot hooks surrounding that particular shopkeep or that particular location. And then typically you will get a selection, sometimes 1 or 2 pages, sometimes a few more, of gear related to that particular concept. I should go ahead and say that Paizo has stretched beyond what we might normally think about when we think about shops and shopkeepers and gear for our parties. One of the shops that's mentioned is called Summit and Sundry, and it caters to adventuring gear. You'll find things like folding ladders and wheelbarrows, just regular gear that your player characters might use. However, other shops in the book will cater to other needs that your players might have. For example, the Rune Room caters to magical runes that your players might purchase, and in this case actually introduces runes that can be attached to things like your cloak or even an umbrella. I'm not joking, there's actually a rune that you can attach to an umbrella and use to float gently down to the ground. Other shops included in the book include things like the Kitten's Slumber or the Menagerie, which have new options for familiars and animal companions respectively. Every shop has a different theme, a different focus, and can allow your players to find a wide variety of gear, items, or creatures that can help them on their adventures. They even have a warehouse. The owner's name I'm not even going to attempt because I will butcher it. But they have a warehouse that caters to selling sky metals inside of the Pathfinder setting. The variety of shops and the storytelling that goes into these shops is consistently excellent, and as a storyteller, I think you will find a lot of inspiration here. It is worth noting that the concept of this book describes these shops as all existing inside of the city of Absalom in the Golarian setting, but the majority of these shops you could very easily transport to a different city, a different location. These businesses can easily be adapted to whatever you need for your campaign. If I have a criticism of the presentation of these businesses, it is relatively minor, and it is one that probably doesn't surprise you if you're familiar with Pathfinder 2e at all, and that is that the content is very scattered. You have familiars over here, you have animal companions over here, here's disability gear, here's sky metals, here's all of these different chunks in different locations, and it can be a little bit difficult to find whatever it is you need, but the book is presenting these shops in a very thematic and deliberate way, so it bothers me a little bit less in this book than it does in other books such as Guns and Gears. The structure of the book kind of necessitates that particular form of presentation. Now, it is worth noting that randomly in the middle of all of these shops that have been presented, the book also presents a new ancestry, and this is a very interesting and entertaining ancestry, the Poppet ancestry. Now, a Poppet is a relatively common sight in Golarion, at least according to the book. They are essentially small-sized constructs that wizards or other individuals might use to help them with simple tasks, for example, cleaning up around the shop. However, the Poppet ancestry represents Poppets that have gained a degree of consciousness, a degree of self-awareness that goes beyond what a normal Poppet would have. So, much like the Leshy ancestry represents a conscious upgrade to the standard Leshy in the Golarion setting, the Poppet ancestry represents an upgrade to Poppets in the Golarion setting as well. Now, I don't want to dive into everything that the Poppets can do, but there is some fantastic storytelling potential here. There are 5 particular heritages that come with the Poppet. The first is the Ghost heritage, which represents a Poppet that has been inhabited by the soul, or at least a piece of a soul, of a particular individual. So, for example, if someone passed away and their soul came to reside inside of a doll, it would be child's play to turn that into a character. That was a terrible pun. I feel bad about that one. No, I don't. The Stuffed ancestry represents Poppets that are filled with straw or leaves or cotton, and they are essentially immune to falling damage. The Toy Poppet heritage represents a child's toy that has gained sentience in one fashion or another, and unlike most Poppets, it is tiny size rather than small size, which means that Poppets are now potentially a second tiny Ancestry available inside of Pathfinder 2e. Wind-up Poppets can literally be wound up with a key or gears or some other fashion, and as long as they are wound up every day, they don't need things like food or water. And then finally, if you wish upon a star, the Wishborn Poppet represents a Poppet that has been brought to life by the wish of a mortal, typically an innocent soul of some sort. The storytelling potential here is amazing, and I cannot possibly dive into everything that the Poppet could potentially represent inside of a game, but this is a fun inclusion, and I definitely have some character ideas rattling around inside my head. After the main stories that are presented in the book, it has a section of basically back alley blurbs. They are one-paragraph descriptions of other stores that a game master can use to develop other potential shopping locations inside of their game. One example would be the snake oil salesman Dr. Mirchin. And bear with me on this one of my favorites is Nature's Bearing, which is literally run by an awakened bear. I'm throwing this at my players at some point. Benji the Bear needs to make an appearance. I love it. These blurbs don't come with any specific new items, but it would be very easy to build out a shop concept from the blurbs that you are given. The next section is called Absalom Ads, and as I mentioned earlier, it is presented as a periodical that your players can subscribe to, which can magically deliver training manuals and other pieces of information to your players wherever they might travel inside the Inner Sea. This is sort of the Phoenix University of the Galarian universe. I think that's what we've got going on here. If you want to train for a new job while you are out in the field, the Absalom Ads are for you. This particular section comes with 3 new archetypes that your players can take. We're not going to dive deep into the archetypes here. I might do separate videos later if you're interested. The first is the Captivator, which is an archetype which is devoted to the use of enchantment and illusion magic and is all about pushing your social game for good or ill. The next one is the Spell Trickster archetype, and there's an interesting sidebar about using Spell Trickster concepts without necessarily having to take the archetype. Can't fully dive into that here, but it is a very interesting conversation. This archetype is all about taking spells inside of Pathfinder 2e and modifying them in some way. For example, the Summon Instrument spell can become Summon Ensemble, and when a caster uses Summon Ensemble, instead of just playing one instrument, they are now surrounded by an entire orchestra of instruments that play alongside of them. Spell Trickster is a lot of fun. Its uses can be a little niche, but I think it opens a unique area of gameplay, so I definitely enjoy it. And then last but not least, the one that I guarantee you is showing up at my gaming table more than the other two is the Wrestler archetype. It is full of actions and reactions that are straight out of the WWE. There is literally an archetype feat called Suplex. I love this. It's beautiful. I guarantee you my players are going to use it. It is amazing. And then the book closes off with an equipment table section. And that just lays out all of the new gear, all of the new items that are available by level. Pretty standard stuff. And that's the book. It's pretty simple, it's pretty easy. It's kind of focused on using this content from a Game Master perspective, but if you keep that in mind, it's good, it's fun, and I think that you'll get a lot of mileage out of this book. But let me turn the conversation over to you. What do you think about the Grand Bazaar? Do you agree with my assessment? Are there positives of this book that I overlooked, or negatives that I failed to mention? Let me know in the comments down below, and let me know if you're interested in me diving into any particular content a little more deeply. If you enjoyed the video, like it and share it, subscribe to the channel. You can check out my Discord and my Patreon, which are linked in the video description below. Thank you for being here, thank you for being a part of the conversation, and have a wonderful day.